Hey, podcast listeners. Today we are going to talk about how to discern truth. This is so important, especially right now, but always. I know we've been talking about truth a lot on the podcast, but today is how to discern truth. You'll want to listen in. We talk about tips and tools for how to discern truth, including following the expansion in your body. And also, here's a tip. You need to want to know the truth. You need to want to see it. Because if any part of you doesn't want to, then it's going to prevent you from actually seeing the truth. So stay tuned and enjoy the episode.
You are listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to Let's Get Metaphysical. I'm your host, Renata Maniaci, here to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. Please enjoy it. This is Season 6, The Moment of Truth, and this is Episode 69, How to Discern Truth. And we've been discussing truth a lot lately. I've spent the past 3 episodes basically saying that over the course of 2020, I really started to realize how much untruth I had been invested in, how much I let untruth influence my life, how false beliefs and inaccurate perceptions and misplaced trust amounted to a portion of my life being based upon lies. And today I'm going to talk some more about the truth, why the truth is important, what circumstances have helped me to see truth more clearly, and how to discern truth moving forward. As always, I encourage you to think, feel, and know the truth for yourself. Take what resonates here and leave the rest, especially now. Especially in this episode. Don't blindly trust what I'm conveying. Feel it, sense it, know it, observe it, and see where you're at. Always, in every situation. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you will have some ideas on how to discern truth for you. Masters and angels, please help us to always feel the truth, know the truth, tell the truth, and be the truth. And let truth be a guide for me and those listening. Thank you with gratitude and full faith. Bless creation. So let's jump right into it. Are you ready? Let's get meta. How much of your life do you think is based on truth? Presumably all of it, right? Because why would we knowingly continue to live any part of our lives based on lies? I don't feel like I need to spend a lot of time on why the truth is so important. If you don't know why the truth is important, you're missing the point of this podcast, and I've lost you already. The truth expands you. It enlightens you. It liberates you. Truth collapses negativity. It allows you to live your most authentic life, to become closer and closer to your soul. And there are different levels of truth at different levels of consciousness. At this level of consciousness, at one level of consciousness, these things are the truth. But as you raise in your level of consciousness, these new things also become the truth. And it's like those little Russia dolls that keep encapsulating each other. And then all of a sudden you have one huge thing that is universal truth, and it encapsulates all the other truths and all the other levels of consciousness. As we raise in our individual level of consciousness, And as the world raises in level of consciousness, we are all being obliged to see higher levels of truth, whether we're ready or not at this point. And again, just because you may not like a certain source doesn't mean that they're not telling the truth. How do you know what truth is and what isn't? How do you discern truth? How do you know what is true and what isn't? Do you trust what you read? Does it depend on where you read it? Who wrote it? Do you trust it if it came from a book, a magazine, an article, a science novella, BuzzFeed? Who wrote it? Do you trust what you're told? Do you trust what you hear? Who do you trust? Your family members? Your boss? Your angels and guides? The news? The stuff you see on social media? Your representatives in government? Do you trust celebrities? Actors? Talk show hosts? Oprah? And if you trust these people, why do you trust them? Let's dig deep. Do you trust what you are eating? The things that you put in your mouth, in your body, the things that are put into food, preservatives, dye, hormones. Do you trust that? Do you trust in the water that you drink? Do you trust that putting fluoride in the water system is healthy for you because they say it's good for your teeth? Do you trust your school, your teachers, where you were educated? Did they know what they were teaching? Did they have your best interest at heart? Did they want to turn you into a free-thinking, independent human? There's so many questions here. There really is. You could go into any aspect of your life. What do you trust and why do you trust it? What makes you trust it? Is it because everybody else trusts it? Or is it because you feel on a deep level that you resonate with that person, that piece of information, that food, that water, that idea, that rule, that law, and on and on and on. One of the easiest ways for me to talk about this is through the idea of expansion and contraction. And you can think of expansion as a bellwether and a gateway, if you will, for truth. What expands you? When do you feel expansive? And I'll talk a little bit about what makes me feel expansive or what has made me feel expansive when I think back in my life. When have I felt the most expansive? The first thing I think of is summer camp. And I just begged to stay there longer and longer as I grew up. And I wouldn't have had these words when I was 9, but what I loved about being there so much was we were in nature, in the middle of the woods, and you're listening to the sounds of the forest, and you're jumping into the lake, and there's no screens, and there's no pavement, and there's no one telling you what to buy or cueing you on where to go or what to do. I guess not in the conventional society terms and ways. You're with community. You're surrounded by people who are playing games with you and running around in the woods and eating together and forming new friendships and canoeing and in the water. I felt expansive there. I felt my best self there, so much so that I wanted to stay there forever and ever. I became a counselor. I became a trip counselor. And that's another thing. When I was leading canoe trips is a place and a time where I felt probably the most expansive I've ever felt, especially in really remote places like the Boundary Waters or the Quetico. Just canoeing out in the middle of nowhere, and maybe you would only see the people that you were with and no other people for a couple of days. You're not using cell phones. There's no service. You're cooking your own food. You're connected to the earth literally all the time, whether it's on the water or while you're portaging or while you're sleeping in a tent under the stars. And I felt so expanded and expansive, and your intuition just soars like that. I mean, that's how it was for me. I also felt expanded when I lived in Senegal. And I lived there for about a year and a half altogether. And I lived in Dakar. So I lived in a city. It wasn't like in nature per se, but it was also expansive in a different way. And having some time since I've been there and since I've lived there, I can see that some of that was, again, a lack of screens and more of a lack of information coming at you. And that's not to say that there isn't there, but if it's in a language that you don't speak fluently, and I don't speak Wolof fluently, then it's not like it's seeping into your mind and your subconscious and your being all the time. At least that's how I see it. And also just feeling more connected to the earth and feeling more connected to people. It really helped me to feel expansive. And why am I talking about expansion? I'm talking about this because it helps you to be in a state where you can discern truth. When you're feeling in that state, you're very grounded. You're very centered. You can resonate with your body and how it's feeling. You're in tune. You're more aware. So this is why I'm asking you to sink into when and where in your life you felt expansion. So you know what triggers it. You know what, maybe triggers is the wrong word, but you know what helps you to feel expansive. And for me, it's being in nature. It's being outside. It's being maybe in different places that are a bit more connected to the earth. And here in Costa Rica, I feel more expanded here than I did in Washington, D.C., let's say. And I love D.C. I still love D.C. But being here, I feel more expansive for a lot of different reasons that I don't have to go into all of them. So where do you feel expanded? When do you feel expanded and expansive? And that can be a bellwether for you to see if you're in a state where you can really sink in and resonate. Is what this person's saying to me true? Is it expanding me? Does it feel like it resonates in my body? Is what I'm hearing on the news making me expand? Is what I'm reading on Facebook make me feel expansive and liberated and enlightened? And on the flip side of that, what makes you feel contracted? And we don't have to dwell on this, but this is just to bring to your awareness. What makes you feel contracted? For me, I feel more contracted when I'm in big cities. I do. I lived in New York City for 2 years, and I'm so glad that I did, but I didn't even realize until I left the city, when I would leave the city, that I would just expand. My whole being would expand once I left the confines of New York City. And that's me. Listen, I have friends who grew up in the center of New York City, and for them, that is their expansion place, and that's perfect. This is just me, but we're all different, right? So where do you feel contracted? And for me, it's having too many humans around you and maybe too much concrete and too many noises, but that's me. I can feel it in my solar plexus when I'm feeling contracted. If I sink into my body and feel a tightness there right in my solar plexus, I know that for me is a sign that I'm feeling contracted, because you can feel the tightness there for me. So what expands you and what contracts you? And where do you feel grounded and centered? And if you don't know about grounding and centering, go back and listen to my episode about grounding and centering. I also have a workshop on it if you're interested. But these are really important. These are your steps, okay? These are helpful steps to help you to recognize and discern truth. I think a lot of you who are listening to this already know about grounding, already know about centering, okay? Expansion and contraction, just another way to think of this. So things that help you to discern truth, feeling expanded, being grounded, being connected to the earth, which is really being connected to your soul, being connected to your high self. Feeling that flow, feeling in the flow of energy. So all of these things help you to discern truth. Here's another thing. What is in it for your source of information? Like wherever you're getting your information from or forming your beliefs, your worldviews, etc. Do they have a vested interest in you believing what they say? And if so, what is it? Whether they want you to buy something or have you think the way that they do, or to control you in some other subtle or overt way. Is there a vested interest for the source that's giving you information? I touched on this in the last episode about disclosure and transparency, of which there's not much in our world up until now, and hopefully that's all about to change. But what are these sources' vested interests? I think the honest interests of basically anything you consume should be disclosed. So let's start here. Let's start with this podcast. First of all, it's free. You could choose it. But so much of the news is free and social media is free. And that's what makes it, What's my vested interest for those of you listening? Well, at the end of every episode, you hear that the intention of this podcast is to raise the vibration of the planet. That's true. That's true. I really do want to raise the vibration of the planet. That is a vested interest that I have in producing this podcast, which the idea for, by the way, didn't come from me. It came from my guidance. It didn't come from my ego. I never wanted to be a podcast host. I didn't wake up one morning and say, wow, I'd make a really great podcast host. That's not why I started this. Another vested interest I truly have is for you to free your mind. I do feel like a lot of our minds have been controlled. And I talked about this in the previous 3 episodes. And what comes after or along with freeing your mind is freeing your soul. I do want this. This is a vested interest that I have in not only the podcast, but also the production company, Up and Awaken. And if I'm very honest, on a human level, it might be nice to have some of you who are listening donate or tithe to Up and Awaken Productions, or to take courses or clearings with us. And that's, for, I guess, human compensation reasons. And at the same time, it's also to further in your awakening process, because I do believe that our clearings and our courses do that. So there you go. Those are my vested interests in producing this podcast. Take them or leave them. But I'm trying to be as transparent as I can. And it would be great if everywhere, all the things that you consumed were transparent in their interest in having you listen to them. So things that help to discern truth. Now we have feeling expansion, being grounded, connected to the earth, being connected to your soul, your high self, and being aware of vested interests. So at this point, I'm going to tune into my guidance to see if there's anything else coming through at this time that we can talk about. And I'm right away getting the word veil and seeing the image of literally a veil being lifted off of Earth, as though Earth were this globe that had kind of like, a shawl or a dark, like a veil over it. And I see it lifting and being pulled off. This is a moment of truth. It really is. That's what's coming in right now. And it's interesting because I was talking about different levels of consciousness before, and how at different levels of consciousness, there are different truths, but that the truth above at the next level of consciousness encapsulates the truths below it. It doesn't make them not true. It just expands upon a more truer truth. And this is important. It's important to understand. You keep growing in consciousness. You keep expanding into more truth. And what's really difficult at this moment, this is what I'm hearing, is being ready and wanting to see these truths that are becoming very clear and very obvious in a way that they haven't been before. And we could have a whole nother episode about why these truths are becoming so obvious and so clear right now in our history. I don't even think I'm going to go into that in another episode, because the short version is we're raising in vibration. And as that happens, the level of consciousness goes up. We all deserve to know more. We're all worthy of knowing more and understanding more truth, etc. That's where I'm at in my level of understanding about all of this. But we are at that point. We're at a very high level of consciousness on this planet where all of this stuff is becoming obvious and more clear. Obvious is a strong word, but it's becoming more clear. And you need to want to see it. They want me to talk a little bit about this now. I actually wrote it down for a little bit later as we're closing out the episode, but that is a huge part of it. That phrase of you see what you want to see, that's true. You do see what you want to see. So if what you want to see is untrue, that's what you're going to see, right? So you have to want to see the truth. You have to want to see the truth and know the truth. And if there's any part of you that does not truly desire to see the truth, then there will be aspects of yourself that are blinding you from it by your own volition. You will be preventing yourself on some level from seeing, knowing, feeling, experiencing the truth. So you have to want it. That's what's coming through right now. Thank you. Bless creation. So this is a big topic, and there is obviously much more that could be discussed on this topic of discerning truth, which is why Julia Malone and I created a workshop by the same name, How to Discern Truth. So if this topic piques your interest, you might want to check it out. And as many of you may know from my previous courses, it is extremely to the point and experiential. Within the first few minutes, you have a major clearing that removes all types of blocks to truth and other falsehood and misbeliefs, anything that is ready to go. Then you receive an activation to use your own body's intelligence to discern more truth. And we also have a very powerful request section, which gets your guides and your high self aligned and working to make you a truth magnet. Because as the angels and the guides brought in a few moments ago, you have to want to see and know the truth. That's really important. People don't get that. You see what you want to see is actually a very accurate phrase, as I mentioned. You have to want to see the truth. So this is part of the workshop. This is part of How to Discern Truth, the workshop, not the episode. And if this workshop sounds like it is for you, you can find it at www.upandawaken.com. And then you can click on courses. This is a really important topic. As you can tell, we're really moving into this new timeline, a timeline where things are coming to light, darkness into light, lies into truth. And yeah, I'm focusing on it. I'm spending time on it. I hope that you're getting something out of it. So it is that time of year Happy holidays to everyone. I hope you've been having a pleasant holiday season under the circumstances of our current Earth situation. It's time for some updates and some appreciation. And let me please start by appreciating every person who is actively donating and tithing to the Let's Get Meta podcast and Up and Awaken productions via our Patreon. All of our productions are currently self-funded. Your donations and tithing help us soar to greater heights by helping with production costs and content creation, allowing our awakening content to continue to uplift the planet. So thank you to all of our current patrons: Gina, Uche, Vicky, Josephine, Trevor, Sarah, Nevin, Laura, Sue, Yuta, Melody, Beto, Larissa, Carol, Kim, Jill, Catherine, Kim, Aisha, Holly, Debbie, Abby, Rachel, Cindy, Lynn, Lindsay, Kelly, Hannah, Ellen, Stephanie, Aries, Liz, Guy, Colby, Crystal, Becky, Julia, Stephen, Zebulon, and Bill. Thank you so much for supporting the production company, for really helping us do what we feel like we need and want to do in the world and bring forward more awakening content that really strikes a chord in our souls and helps us remember who we are. That's why we're here. That's what we are trying to do and what we are doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you so much. We appreciate you so much. And just thank you so much for being part of this movement. And we just revamped our Patreon page a bit. So now patronage comes in different angel wings. This is an announcement. This comes in different angel wings now: cherubs, earth angels, archangels, and master angels. And as I've said many times on this podcast, if you don't believe in angels, you're listening to the wrong podcast. I'm very open about this. If you are interested in supporting us, I'm sure you will receive positive karma in your bank account for that. Plus, anyone signing up to become our patron by January 31st, 2021 will also get access to the 3 major clearing and activation sessions that we did in December of 2020 to clear the slate and plant seeds for 2021. These 3 are very powerful, and you will receive that if you become a patron by January 31st. To do this, you can go to patreon.com/up and and see which wings fit you best. Then click on Become a Patron. If you love what we do at Let's Get Meta and Up and Awaken Productions and simply want to support it and have easy access to our content, that is what Patreon is now focused on: donations and tithing. And if you don't know about tithing, meditate on it, look into it. It is the gift that keeps on giving. When you find good and true places to donate or tithe, it comes back to you tenfold. I might be biased, but I feel like we are a worthy cause to tithe to at this moment. And then at some point soon, when we go big, you can say, I helped them get started. I was one of Up and Awaken Productions' first angel donors. Good karma, people. Good karma. And again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/up and awaken. And if you love what we do at Let's Get Meta and Up and Awaken Productions and want more of that, you like what we do, you want to be involved, you want to ascend with us, you want more clearings and courses and community, then you might be interested in joining the Gateway. Yes, this is new. Introducing the Up, Up, and Awaken Gateway, a community where awakening content, courses, and clearings align to assist in your angelic ascension. It's a beautiful platform, and don't worry, existing patrons, most of you, especially if you're involved in courses and clearings already, will be grandfathered into the gateway. And this is just an amazing place for us all to come together, connect, and work together and ascend together. So check that out at gateway.upupandawaken.com. All right, we have some more exciting things happening, but that's enough for now. I'm going to leave it there for today. So a very, very happy new year to all of you. I really do love you all. I really do care about your souls. And I am very excited for what is happening on the planet. I'm very excited for what's happening on the planet. And may you awaken more in 2021 than ever before. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up, Up, and Awaken production. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. The show is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci, co-creator of Up, Up, and Awaken Productions, a platform devoted to creating conscious content to assist in the awakening currently taking place on this planet. If you want to see more from Up, Up, and Awaken, please subscribe to the Up, Up, and Awaken Productions channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Give us a 5-star rating or write us a review on your podcast app. To learn more, visit our website at letsgetmeta.com. The Let's Get Meta podcast is almost entirely listener supported. If you love the show and want to support it, you can still become a patron of the podcast at patreon.com/upupandawaken. We appreciate all types of support. It helps keep this show going. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.